You and I probably have a lot in common. I'm a mom. I work hard to provide for my family. I have goals and dreams, things I'm good at and things I wish I did better. A few years ago, I was on a treadmill. I think most of us find ourselves there at one time or another. We find ourselves repeating the same old habits and patterns, not really going anywhere. And maybe the treadmill we're on isn't even ours. Maybe it's made up of the expectations of other people. At a critical time in my life, I had a couple of conversations that made me hit the big red stop button on the treadmill. Then I did something revolutionary. I stepped off. I looked around at my life and asked myself, is this what I really want? Some people would call that a midlife crisis, but I didn't radically change my clothing style or buy a sports car. Instead, I started making small changes to my habits and routines. What I noticed was that one small change led to another, and over time, the difference was revolutionary. I think most people define midlife as a certain age, but maybe that's just the time when we take what was given to us in the beginning of our lives and decide to mold it into what we want for us, and not for anyone else. You can make small changes that are revolutionary too, like maybe listening to a new podcast. It's just one small thing, but it also might just be revolutionary. Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to the Midlife Revolution. I'm your host, Megan Connor, and today we are going to be watching the final trial management conference in Lori Daybell's case in Arizona for conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon Boudreaux. And the trial conference is about to start in about 20 minutes, and I am going to be streaming it here on the channel. But I also wanted to go over a little bit of the timeline of the events of the case and talk to you a little bit about how we got to this space, how we got to the Brandon Boudreaux trial, and what to expect going forward in this trial. So I've been covering all of the motions that Lori has filed and all of the motions that the state has filed, the responses, etc. Right now, we are still waiting to hear about what's going to happen with the request for a new trial. Lori filed a motion just after her guilty verdict in the Charles Vallow case, and I did cover that the state responded to her request to have the case dismissed. That was filed on the 25th of April. But she still hasn't received a response from the court about asking for a new trial. So I'm expecting that at the conference this morning, there are a couple of different things that are going to be addressed. One is the 404B evidence that the state is going to bring in, or that they're requesting to bring in. Prosecutor Trina Kay, in her initial filing, she indicated that she was going to bring in everything, all of Lori's past convictions. However, in the amended filing that we went over the other day on the live, she only mentioned count 7, I believe it was, which was grand theft by deception. So I'm not really sure what is going on with that. I'm really interested to hear Trina Kay's argument in that, and then I'm expecting that we'll probably have a ruling from the court on that today. So this is supposed to be the final trial management conference. In other words, going over witness lists, going over timing, going over the final jury pool that's going to be sent out, or the questionnaire that's going to be sent out electronically to jurors, and going over the timeline. But because we have so many open pending filings, I think we're going to see some of that today as well. Trina Kay asked for a hearing about the 404B evidence. She actually also asked to have the video of the FBI agent Balance. She asked to have that video not broadcast, and so to only have the audio of that testimony broadcast. So I expect the judge will also rule on that. In addition, there was some there were a lot of issues that Lori brought up in her request for a new trial. One of them involved juror number 15 and his comments, and we went over that extensively on the last video. So those are the things that I'm expecting to hear about this morning. We know that this is supposed to be the final trial management conference, but there are a lot of pending issues before the court. So I'll be interested to see how much of that they're going to address this morning, how much time they've set aside for it. Generally speaking, these conferences last 20 to 30 minutes, but because of everything that's pending before the court, I'm expecting this one may take a little bit more time. So that's a little bit about what we're going to expect to see in this final trial management conference. So how did we get here? That's a question we could spend a lot of time answering. But just to be a little bit more concise about it and to give a little bit of a timeline, going all the way back to the murder of Charles Vallow being the first event in this chain of events that happened. So, we don't need to go all the way back through Lori and Chad meeting and all of that, but I just want to make sure people understand, because there are so many family members and names thrown around in this. And I feel like we kind of need a diagram, which I've started to make one several times, and then it ends up just getting clunky. So what you need to know is that in Lori's family of origin, you have Janice and Barry, who are her parents. And then Janice and Barry had 6 children, a total of 6 children. Stacy was the oldest of those children. She died in 1998. I believe she was about 32 years old. And at the time, her daughter, Melanie, was about 8 years old, if I remember correctly. She and her husband were already divorced. There was quite a lengthy custody battle between the two of them. And her husband, her ex-husband, Steve, ended up earning full custody of Melanie. And she was estranged, Melanie was, from the Cox family for quite some time. When Stacy died in 1998, it was the first time in years that the Coxes or us had seen Melanie. She was able to get here in time to say goodbye to her mom before she passed away. And then Melanie was allowed to stay for the funeral. And I have some pictures of her in my parents' house, spending some time with her at that very young age. It's my understanding that for the next few years, she continued to be estranged from the Cox family. And then gradually, Steve began to allow them to visit with each other. And Lori became sort of like a second mother to Melanie. So Melanie is Lori's niece. And that's why sometimes you have heard her referred to in this case as Melanice. I think it was Gigi McKelvey of Pretty Lies and Alibis that came up with that nickname to distinguish her from Melanie Gibb, who was Lori's friend. Melanie Boudreaux, formerly Boudreaux, is Lori's niece. Now, Melanie lived as an adult in the Arizona area around the rest of the family, and she married Brandon Boudreaux, and together they had 4 children. Now, I followed Melanie on Facebook, and that was one of the ways that I kept in touch with all of the Arizona family members. So I got to see her wedding pictures. I got her wedding announcement. I got to see the pictures from the wedding. I got to see her kids being born. I got to see Melanie participating in running marathons. She did do basic training for the Air Force here in San Antonio. So I got to sort of follow her life on social media, and we messaged each other randomly from time to time, but we were not super, super close. But Melanie was close with Lori. She saw Lori as sort of another mother figure. And when Lori started getting involved in all of these preparing a people conferences, what Adam referred to as extra church, and reading near-death experience books, Melanie was right there with her through a lot of this. And we've heard Brandon say before that Melanie experienced sort of a resurgence in her religious affiliation, that she was becoming more devout. Much like Lori began attending the temple every single day, Melanie started going to the temple more often, started going to church more often, getting more involved than she had previously been before. And so it stands to reason, with Lori and Melanie being close and Melanie being invited to a lot of these conferences and participating in podcasts, we saw evidence in the last trial that they were communicating very closely with each other. Lori was asking Melanie, really wasn't asking Melanie, was telling her she couldn't go to a wedding in Utah during the weekend that Charles and Adam were coming into town because Lori needed her to be close. And so we can go back over some of those text messages. In fact, I'm getting ready to clip out a little part of the video during my verdict watch in the Charles Vallow case. I read through all of the text messages and emails that were in the FOIA documents for that case. And so I'm getting ready to clip out a video where it's just going to be that, so you can have it all in one place concisely together if you want all of that information, so you can see how involved those people on the periphery of Lori's little group were. Specifically that they were really helping Lori to isolate Charles. And so this case is about Brandon Boudreaux, who is Melanie's former husband. So Melanie and Brandon were married. They had 4 children. And at some point in the summer, early spring and early summer of 2019, Lori convinced Melanie that Brandon was gay. And I think she saw a couple of videos that she blew out of proportion, Lori did, and she convinced Melanie to divorce her husband. And so they filed for divorce just shortly before Charles was killed. If I remember correctly, their divorce filing was sometime in early June of 2019. So they went through their divorce. They were having custody issues, as one might imagine in this situation. Brandon was super concerned for his children being in proximity to Lori and Chad and Alex and that whole group of people. And I believe out of concern for their safety and overabundance of caution, he moved with the children to a new residence. Now, he did share the address of that residence with Melanie so that she knew where the children were, although she did do a Facebook post where she claimed that Brandon had kidnapped the children. But we're getting into evidence that, I'm not quite ready to go all the way down that rabbit hole yet. But just to give you a framework of where we are in the case when this happened. So early in October, Brandon moved to a new residence that he was renting. He had just dropped off one of the children, I believe, at school and had just returned from the gym when he noticed a Jeep in front of his driveway. He was shot at. The bullet hit the frame of the windshield on the driver's side, and he was not injured. And then the Jeep sped away. Brandon called police, and he started to follow the Jeep, and he recognized that it was a Texas license plate. And because he had helped Charles with the insurance for his vehicles, he recognized that this was likely the vehicle that was registered to Charles. And so he called police. They had a conversation. I think police advised him to not continue to follow the shooter. And police were called out. There's body cam footage of that interview where we see that it sort of starts to dawn on Brandon. He says to the officer, my ex-wife is sort of mixed up in this crazy stuff with her aunt, and I hope this doesn't have anything to do with that. And so it was a horrific incident for Brandon, very scary. And then, of course, we know in the timeline that the children were already missing. They had already been killed. And then it was so I believe the shooting occurred on October 3rd. It was just a few days later that Tammy Daybell was shot at by what she called a paintball gun. And then the rest of the saga continued after that. So that's where this piece of the puzzle fits in to all of Lori's cases. And from what I understand, the prosecution obviously believes that they have enough evidence to convict Lori in a conspiracy to commit murder against Brandon Boudreaux. Now, we heard some evidence during Lori's first trial that Lori alluded to Zulema and to Melanie Gibb, that Melanie Boudreaux had plenty of money for all of them. She had received a large sum in the divorce settlement. And then I think Lori was expecting, allegedly, an insurance payout that was going to take care of everybody in this little group and pay for their white tents and wherever they were going to gather to. And Melanie's comment, I believe, during that court case was that it made her sad that Lori would talk about her and her divorce settlement that way. Hopefully that was a little bit of a wake-up call for Melanie. So what ended up happening a little bit further down the road is that Lori and Alex and Chad were all communicating with each other. They all had several different phones, burner phones. And so I think that the evidence is going to show that allegedly that they conspired together to kill Brandon so that his life insurance money would be available to the group to use. So that's where we are. That's how we got to this point. That's where this little piece of the puzzle fits in. Later, Melanie Boudreaux remarried. She married Ian Pawlowski in late November of 2019 after knowing him for just a couple of weeks. And I believe on their honeymoon night, on their wedding night, Melanie started to tell Ian some of these beliefs that Lori had and some of the saga that had gone on. And Ian, who had children of his own, was alarmed to hear this. And so he told his ex-wife, and they communicated. His ex-wife, I believe, encouraged Ian to go to the police. And he later wore a recording device to record conversations that were taking place between Melanie and Lori and Chad. So I don't know if some of that evidence will also come into play in this trial. But Melanie did remarry Ian Pawlowski, so her last name is Pawlowski now. Most people still refer to her as Melanie's. And I want to point this out too. Thank you, Lee T, for pointing this out. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. FOIA documents showed Lori Googling Gerber life insurance around that time. She was looking for Melanie's kids. In my opinion, that's very chilling. Melanie's kids, I believe, did have each a $10,000 policy. And those are pretty common to have around $10,000 on a child, just because that takes care of final expenses and legal fees and things like that. So the fact that Lori was Googling this, because obviously by this time, I believe in the FOIA documents, her children were already missing. So I lost my camera, guys. Give me just 1 second. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I know it looks like you still have audio, but I'm not sure. I think I might have a bad cable, to be honest with you. Let me just check a couple of settings. In the meantime, we are waiting for the final trial management conference to be aired. There is a pool camera in the courtroom, and we are expecting that to go live here just in the next 10 minutes or so. I wanted to be on just a little bit early so that we could recap where we are in the case and how we got here. So it looks like I may not get that camera to come back. Let me try one more time here. Well, it looks like I'm just going to have the old laptop camera, so it's not as beautiful, but hey, we can pivot. We'll deal with it. And then you get to see my lovely curtains and my lovely Millennium Falcon behind me and part of my TV. So apologize, guys. I don't think that camera is going to come back. I'm going to try one more time. Yep, it's just not available. So my apologies for the lower quality camera, but we will just deal with it. Linda Porter says, Megan, I think they all should be put on trial, Melanie Pawlowski, Melanie, and Zulema, because in my opinion, they should all be arrested just because they may not have done the actual killings, but they all had some. Yeah, I know there's a character limit on the chat there. So I see what you're saying here, absolutely. And we've talked about this a little bit before. We always have to go with likelihood of conviction. And based on the evidence that the state has, I don't know how much evidence they have that they could get a conviction for Melanie or for Zulema or for Melanie's. It really just depends on, how much evidence that they have in that favor. Conspiracy charges are hard to prove to begin with. And secondly, it's difficult to gather the evidence that's going to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that they definitely conspired, had a hand in it, and or were able to profit off of it. So, that's what we have to go on. I'm going to show this other comment by Lee T. When Melanice went to Brandon's parents' garage and kept trying to get them to come to the door, bringing Alex with her was chilling. I'm glad law enforcement was so firm getting rid of her. And I agree with this because Alex was literally outside in a van, and he did have weapons in the vehicle. That was very scary. That was very chilling to me. A lot of the evidence that came out during Chad's trial convinced me that Melanie was a lot more involved than I originally believed her to be. And so it's very, very concerning. The world knows. It would be nice if they could have a conviction. But again, we need to rely on the prosecution to prosecute the people that they have enough evidence to convict, because it is an expensive proposition, and they want to go for the people that they know they're going to get a conviction on. So Kiko Jump, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think somebody corrected me at one point, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, so I apologize. Who was the driver of the Jeep? This is a good question. Generally, it's believed to allegedly be Alex. We believe that Alex, he was actually caught on several different traffic cams, and his device was tracked. And we have receipts to show that Alex drove from Rexburg to Gilbert, Arizona that day. And there's been some speculation about whether or not there was someone in the Jeep with him. The speculation has kind of been, did Alex have enough time to shoot out of the back window of the Jeep and then get back into the front seat and drive away? And so I think we're probably going to see some of that evidence come out in this trial, obviously. But I believe that he was alone there. And Eliza says, it's Bring Your Wife to Work Day, and my husband is listening with me again. He says, hi, husband. Good to have you. Thanks to everyone for being here. I appreciate you being here with us to go over this together. I really appreciate your contributions, because a lot of times you guys have comments and suggestions that I'm not able to, come to those conclusions, or I just haven't thought of that before. So I really do appreciate the comments that you guys make and the additions that you make. In addition, I love that this is such a beautiful human community. I love that we are kind and respectful in the chat. And for the most part, we don't see a lot of trolls in our chat. And when we do, they get put in their place pretty quickly, because you guys are so wonderful at keeping it kind and respectful here. As always, Irish Jen, appreciate you being here. You have gone above and beyond throughout this trial process, and it's been amazing having you as a support. So I really appreciate it. So I think what we're also going to see come back in as evidence in this trial is the video from the storage unit, where we see Lori and I believe Chad come in initially. They've removed the back tire and the back seat from that Jeep, and they take it into the storage unit. And then later on, we see Lori and Alex return to the storage unit and bring the back seat and the tire back to the Jeep. In addition, if I remember correctly, there was some Google evidence from the cloud where Lori or Alex, maybe one of the two of them, they were Googling how to remove the back seat from a Jeep, which it's just mind-boggling, some of the asinine stupidity that went on in this case. But we're grateful for it, because it means that we have lots of evidence. So, okay, good to know, Kiko Jump. Thank you for that. So yeah, we're going to see all of the evidence that Lori and Chad and Alex were conspiring together, allegedly, to kill Brandon Boudreaux for his life insurance money. So that's what we're probably likely going to see a lot of in this trial. And again, I'm looking forward to the evidence that we haven't seen yet. I believe that the jury questionnaires are set to go out later this month, just in a couple of weeks. And then I believe that we will have the same type of jury selection process that took place before, where the defense and the prosecution, together with the judge, will go over the answers to those electronic questionnaires, and they will make a choice about who is going to be appearing in person, and then the jury will begin to appear in person, where they will do that in-person voir dire. Although I hope that based on the last trial, that they will have more alternates this time. I'm hoping that they'll have 6 alternates rather than 4. And I'm hoping that they'll do a little bit closer vetting. I'm hoping the judge will give some little more specific instructions about keeping the jury safe, away from evidence, away from online things, and being careful about what they say in public, especially after the trial. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that process changes now that we've had a chance to do this one time already. I'm also really, really interested to see what changes we're going to see in Lori and the way that she presents her case, if any, and the way that she carries herself in court. It'll be interesting to see if she's learned anything from her past mistakes, being sort of slapped on the wrist for subpoenaing people she was not supposed to subpoena. It'll be interesting to see if she actually does subpoena witnesses correctly this time. I'll be interested to see today. We should see a witness list today from Lori. And it'll be interesting to see if she decides that she's going to put on a defense at all. I'm also interested to see if Lonnie Dworkin is going to be allowed in as an expert on this case, if they're going to resolve that issue with the gray key and the Cellbrite extraction. I believe that personally that it was operator error that they weren't able to get that extraction done. And so it'll just be interesting to see if that expert gets to come in. So it looks like that the hearing has begun now, and so I'm going to go ahead and go to sharing that screen. If you'll give me 1 second, and then I will be back afterwards for commentary. I'm going to be taking lots of notes. So thanks for being here and joining me, guys, this morning. Let me go ahead and share that.
For the record, I believe the victim is appearing virtually.
Lori Daybell.
All right. We have a number of things to discuss and get through here today. First of all is the motion for new trial the defendant filed. I received the response. I think the reply is due today. Is that being filed?
Yes, Your Honor, I have it right here. And
is it ready to be filed?
Yes.
Okay, we'll file that. You have a copy for the state?
I do.
Okay. The response, I'll take a look, or the reply, I should say, I'll take a look at that. The next thing I wanted to discuss was the state had filed a notice of intent to use defendant's other acts to establish conspiracy, premeditation, and/or establish motive pursuant to Rule 404B. In your pretrial statement, you indicated you wish to strike or withdraw that.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so that's withdrawn. Next, we have state's request to preclude the media from showing the face of a testifying witness, one of the witnesses. I'm assuming you don't really have a dog in that fight, Ms. Daybell, or do you have a response?
I don't have a dog in the fight, but I haven't had a chance to read over. I just got a bunch of my stuff, so I'm not really sure what they're asking for.
Well, one of the witnesses also works in an undercover capacity, and showing that witness's face could compromise other investigations or things that witness is doing. So it's a request to not broadcast his face through the media out in the public.
I apologize that the audio is so quiet.
FBI or something to that effect?
It's Nicholas Balance. I think he is an FBI agent.
Correct, he is an FBI agent.
And he's a relevant witness because of why?
According to the state's notice, he created a PowerPoint regarding some of the Wi-Fi or cellular data
Cellular
location.
and Wi-Fi use, yes.
The audio is super low, guys. It's just what's coming from the
I have no
feed.
real objection to him being obscured. I don't know how they'll do it, but
All right, so I'll direct the media during trial when witness Nicholas Balance is called to testify. They can't broadcast his face out. They can focus the lower part of the witness stand or something like that, but his likeness or image or face should not be broadcast out to the public. So I'm essentially granting the state's request in that regard. Next, we have state's amended request for Rule 609 hearing and the defendant's response. When I read the amended request, you're simply adding the most recent conviction, correct?
Yeah.
You didn't really respond to that in your reply. You kind of just talked about the previous reply that you had made about, did you notice that she had asked to basically add your most recent conviction?
I saw that, but I didn't know what the law was since I wasn't sentenced for that yet. So I wasn't quite sure where to go on that. So I left it off.
Okay, with the 609, I think similar to the last trial, I'll put that off. And depending on if you testify or not, it only really becomes relevant if you decide to testify. So we'll table that for the time being. Next, I have the state's motion limiting to preclude inadmissible evidence relating to Tammy Latchik, who is a evidence scene technician type person from the, I think it's city of Chandler.
Gilbert.
Did you, or sorry, Gilbert, did you have a chance to review that?
I just got it and I am in the middle of responding to that. But I do have a request in that regard
Which is?
from the state, since it was, just given to us, and I'm sure that the state had that information clearly before now. We need additional information, and due to that late disclosure, I was going to ask the state if they could disclose to us the employment records of Tammy and the emails regarding this incident and any recordings or body cam videos, so that we don't have to have my investigator try to do an investigation so quickly. If they have that information, if it could be turned over to the defense so that we don't have to try to gather that information so quickly.
Well, I don't think you're necessarily entitled to all those things if it's deemed that incident is irrelevant to her testimony. So I think the threshold issue is if you want to file a response where you think that is relevant, something that you can get into an incident that happened 4 years later, I guess when can you file your response?
Without any further information, I don't know, when is that response necessarily due, Your Honor?
It was filed May 3rd, so technically it's already past due. So can you file it by next, you have a copy of it now?
I just got a copy, correct.
All right, how about next Wednesday, the 21st?
Yes, I can do that.
All right, so we'll
And I
set
have
that
a
aside.
question on that as well. Can I make an objection on the sealing? Can I ask under what law or rule or statute that this motion was sealed under?
They've requested to file it under seal because of the nature of the motion and the contents of what that incident is, not needing to necessarily be in the public eye. So if you want to include in your motion an objection to it being filed under seal, you can do that as well.
Okay,
So you'll file that no later than May 21st. I don't need a reply on that. I'll deal with that, I guess, probably our first day of trial or so.
so you're not going to set a 609 hearing?
This is not a,
Oh, not the 609, but a hearing for Tammy Latchik?
I can listen to oral argument when you filed your reply, but I don't believe I needed any sort of hearing on it. So I'll deal with that May 29th or 30th, I suppose. All right, then we have the defendant's motion for no restraints in trial dated May 6th. I don't know, in your motion, I don't know where you get the idea that the sheriff's office recommendation ever was that you have no restraints at all. Their minimum recommendation was that you wear a rack belt.
Well, I have it right here and I copied it verbatim.
Yeah, you
Okay,
said, what it
recommendation.
said was my recommended minimum requirements as listed above, and those were to wear a rack belt.
It said, or the recommendation of MCSO was that they could have a unarmed detention officer and an armed deputy sheriff if I was to not have any restraints.
Right, but that wasn't their recommendation. I've received the defendant's motion. I've received non-party Maricopa County Sheriff Jerry Sheridan's response.
On the MCSO security justifications, my understanding is that was his recommendation.
Your Honor, Joseph Vigil for the Sheriff's Office, if you have any questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll deny the motion from the defendant. The same conditions will be set that we had in the first trial, that being you wear the rack belt, no leg brace. There was one incident during the trial where you asked to take a break because a strap was hanging down behind your jacket. We did that. We rectified the situation. There's been no indication whatsoever that the jury noticed the rack belt or anything like that. So I think those conditions are appropriate and will remain for the second trial.
Your Honor, the jury was not polled to see if they noticed anything either. Was that correct?
Right. There was no request for that. All right. So next we have defendant's motion to consult with advisory council and team during trial dated May 6th. I don't know. I guess what exactly are you requesting? Are you requesting that during the lunch recesses you be housed somewhere where you can meet with your team?
Correct.
Okay.
And I know that it's a DO situation, and I know that our DO has his other obligations to do, so I didn't know if another officer could if something could be arranged so that I would have time with my team during those breaks and during lunchtime.
We did accommodate that during breaks and recesses during the trial to the extent that it doesn't delay the jury getting into the courtroom and resuming the trial when we need to, like when we take the 15-minute afternoon recess. That will continue. You'll have an opportunity to meet with them briefly. Over the lunch hour, I think is the real question. I did receive a response this morning from the sheriff's office, which indicates they don't really have an objection to that. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor. There is an area on the 4th floor in the South Court Tower where she can be taken to meet with her advisory council, and they'll work that out.
All right. I don't have a problem with that. So if you need to meet with them when we break for lunch, just indicate to the DO that's what you need to do. There may be a day where you don't need to meet with them, but I'll essentially grant. Ms. Kay, I don't assume you have an issue with that.
I have no position on it.
So I'll grant the defendant's motion on that she can meet during the lunch hour. Again, the only restriction on that is that we're not going to delay bringing in the jury at 1:30. We'll expect everyone back in the courtroom to start on time. All right, let's talk about the trial schedule and the screening. I received in the state's pretrial statement. Have you seen that?
I just did, yes.
Your Honor, may I be
Yes,
excused?
go ahead. Thank you. The state's pretrial statement indicate there was some witness scheduling issues. If we get the jury sat on the 30th and impaneled on the 30th, the last Friday in May, and we have our opening statements and begin testimony and evidence Monday, June 2nd, you indicated that the state indicated you would run out of witnesses either Wednesday or sometime Thursday.
Correct. That are available that week, yes.
Right, and then so we'll definitely go dark on Friday the 6th. I had initially indicated we would be in trial on that day, but if we can't have any witnesses here, we'll be dark on that day, and we'll indicate that for screening purposes for the jurors. I think we'll still indicate that we'll be in trial on the 5th, and we'll have to play that by ear. Maybe we will be dark, maybe we won't. But as far as when you resume on the 9th, you said you thought you would have 3 witnesses left at that point.
Correct.
Do you have an anticipation? Are those witnesses that would each take a whole day, or?
I think it's possible I could finish that day.
So ultimately what I'm getting at is trying to drill down the schedule and screening for the jury. Do we not need to screen them for the week of the 23rd?
Obviously, I just received the defendant's 15.2 that lists 2 different expert witnesses. I did request that they actually comply with Rule 15.2 and give me any information about any of these experts. They've also listed other witnesses. So because of that, I would still screen them for the other week.
Well, maybe we should address that. Is there still no report from Lonnie Dworkin that the state's received?
I've received nothing.
Do you have some sort of expert report you were disclosing?
We will, Your Honor, yes.
When?
Well, when is that going to be? Because it's way past due.
So the state did receive the affidavit from Lonnie explaining the things, which is why they turned over late discovery in the middle of trial. So we did have that. He's working on a few things for us as well now, and I will get with him as soon as possible and get that report to you as soon as possible.
All right, well, it's depending on what's in that report, it is likely to be precluded at this point, but I'll keep an open mind on that, and I guess we'll wait and see. Let's talk about, for the purposes of scheduling.
Your Honor, and just there's one other person that I'm Googled.
I'm going to ask her about the other
Okay.
witnesses. I received your supplemental witness list, I think yesterday. You have, in addition to Mr. Dworkin, you have Weaver, Barkman, again, Detective Moffett, Jeffrey White, Melanie Gibb, and Zulema Pastanas.
Zulema Pastanas.
Okay.
Mhm.
Was Detective Moffett also involved in this case?
He was involved with the case agent of this case while he was the case agent of the other case, correct?
Okay. So he may or may not have, he may have relevant information. Again, I guess that's a wait and see. What about, who's Weaver Barkman?
So he's a ballistics expert.
Is that an expert? So that's an expert. Do you have an expert report that's been disclosed?
Not yet, Your Honor. We're working on it.
Your Honor, since I have not noticed a ballistics expert, that's a big problem, because if I get something, then I would have to do that. So the defendant's, again, extremely late violation of all rules of criminal procedure is a problem.
It is a problem. Who's Jeffrey White?
My investigator.
Oh, okay. And do you have an idea of in what capacity you think he would be called?
Well, we had made a request from the state for the car door and the window that the bullet supposedly hit, and we were going to have him inspect that as well. We have recently found out that those 2 things do not exist. So I'm not sure what they're going to be putting up as far as ballistics in their case in chief. So I was trying to have someone who could be able to look at whatever reports they're trying to put up and rebut anything that they're saying.
Is Mr. White an expert in that area?
Mr. Weaver?
No, I said Jeffrey White.
He's my investigator.
Right, that's who I was asking, who has relevant information. What's Mr. White's relevant information for, why might he be called as into trial?
Because he's interviewing the witnesses as well, the defense witnesses.
So is it some sort of extrinsic impeachment if they,
Correct.
what about Melanie Gibb?
So Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastanas were both initially noticed in the state's 15.1. They have not noticed them again. I don't know if they can still call them if they're on their list, but they have relevant information to this case.
Have they been presented for an interview by the state?
They've both been interviewed multiple times by the state.
I mean, not by police officers, I mean by either a prosecutor or someone in her office in preparation for trial.
In this case,
Yeah, in either case.
not that I'm aware of.
Have they been subpoenaed?
The subpoenas are out.
What relevant information would they have?
They have relevant information to Brandon Boudreaux
Okay.
and around that
What
time.
is the nature of that relevant information?
It will come apparent if they have to get up and testify, Your Honor. I will only call them if
Okay,
I need
well, they're gonna
them.
be precluded if you can't give me some minimal, what relevant information they have. Just saying that they're relevant doesn't make them relevant. Okay?
Yes, and is this procedure that I have to say what each of my witnesses are relevant ahead of time and give my whole case in chief
Yes.
over to the state? It is?
Yeah.
That's
just
how
like-
it works?
like
That's
the-
the rules of law?
Stop interrupting me. Yes, that is the rule of law. That's just what the state does. They tell you what relevant information each witness has. So my answer is yes. So if you can't tell me what relevant information they have, they'll be precluded.
They both have had dealings with Brandon Boudreaux and Alex Cox. So
Okay, so does someone, that was a server for them at a restaurant. It doesn't make them have relevant information as to this case. Anyone who came into contact with Mr. Boudreaux or Mr. Cox had some interaction with them at some point in their lifetime does not make them a relevant witness. So what is their relevance?
the state had them on their witness list and they're saying they're not relevant?
Apparently not. Are you calling them?
No, they're not
Right.
on my,
Police interview however many people they interview because they're working on the case. They don't know who has relevant information, who doesn't have relevant information. All the people that they interview don't end up being relevant. So because they're listed in a police report somewhere, doesn't necessarily make them relevant.
Okay, their relevance lies in if I have to rebut something that the state puts on in their case in chief. They're just called in case they need them. They're subpoenaed in case I need them.
All right. It sounds like they don't have relevant information. However, I'll include these names on the potential witness list for screening the jurors if the jurors have any knowledge of any of these witnesses out of an abundance of caution. That's really the purposes for today is the questionnaire that goes out to the jurors. So I will include these witnesses. Again, Mr. Dworkin, Mr. Barkman, if they're expert witnesses that haven't provided any sort of report or expert witness testimony, they're likely to be precluded as witnesses. But I'll include them on the witness list. I think what I'm hearing is you said you might finish on the 9th or the 10th? I'm going to indicate on the questionnaire to the jurors, potential jurors, that the trial is likely to end by June 13th, Friday, June 13th. However, I'll include that Monday, the 23rd and kind of say, if needed or if required, might go to June 23rd out of an abundance of caution. So I'll finalize that questionnaire. It's pretty much done and it's pretty much the same as the last one except for the names of the witnesses, the specific allegations, and then I remove the question about viewing medical examiner autopsy type photos because that's not needed in this case. But I'll send you guys out a copy. Actually, I could probably finish it in the next couple minutes and print out a copy so you have it before you leave here today. That questionnaire, I need to get with the jury office. I think we were talking about sending it out the 22nd and cutting it off the 28th or 27th. And then we'll meet again on the 29th in this courtroom to go over the responses. That'll be at 1 p.m. on the 29th.
Your Honor, in light of the juror misconduct or the alleged juror misconduct, I have to object to us having so much information go out about my personal information in that jury questionnaire. Do you not think that was a problem?
What personal information?
The state versus Lori Daybell.
What's the name of the case?
Yeah, but you don't put that on anyone else's questionnaire, or one other person that's ever had that questionnaire ever put out with their name on it. They just don't do it.
I do it in every trial I've done.
Then the people are just going to Google it, and then we're going to have the same exact problem we had getting a jury for that case. We're going to have the same exact problem.
Are you done? Are you just going to keep? Okay. How do we screen for if people have heard about you if we don't include your name? Do you have a response to that?
I'm just saying, you gave them the name and they're just going to Google it.
They're instructed not to Google it. All right. And if you'll recall, when we had all the jurors come in person, one of the first questions I asked them in the afternoon was, who has looked up this case since you filled out the questionnaire? And we had 2 or 3 people raise their hand, and those people were excused. So I have to include your name to screen out for the people that know about your case. And we released about 100 jurors last time because of their answers to that. If we don't include your name, that's 100 extra jurors we have to go through in person and ask if they know you. And in fact, that increases the risk of tainting the rest of the jury pool. If we have someone stand up and say, yeah, I know about her case in Idaho where blah, 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 in front of the rest of the jurors, that'll burn the whole panel. We'll have to start over. So I'm going to include your name in the questionnaire. I don't think there was any other personal information or background information about you in that questionnaire other than your name. So was there any other issues you had with the questionnaire?
No, Your Honor.
So the schedule will be, we'll meet 1 p.m. to go over those answers on the 29th. On the 30th, we'll meet at 10. We'll have walk-in jurors that morning that will fill out the questionnaire. And then the people that survive are screening on the 29th, and those that survive the morning of the 30th will come in the afternoon of the 30th. This will be back in the courtroom we were in last time, 5D of the South Court Tower. Again, I expect to seat that jury at some point that afternoon. And then we'll plan on going Monday through Thursday, June 2nd to June 5th. Then June 9th to June 13th, and if need be, June 23rd.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I have to ask that you would recuse yourself from the obvious personal bias that you have against me and send us to master calendar for this scheduling of a trial.
And what personal bias is that?
A lot, obviously, the personal bias that you're showing right now and that you've shown on the FTR several times during the trial.
Okay, well, I don't have any personal bias, all right? I've over accommodated you on when you have to disclose things. In fact, your expert should be summarily precluded today, and I haven't done that. All right? So
You denied every single one of my motions since for a year and a half that I've been here. Every single one of my motions has been denied. And have any of those motions not have merit? You've denied every single motion.
I think I was here this morning about 15 minutes ago when I granted your motion to meet with your attorneys over the lunch hour. I have granted other motions of yours. Okay?
That's the first motion that you've ever granted
Well,
in my behalf.
file motions that have a legal basis and I might grant them.
So you're saying none of my motions have had merit?
Not many, no.
And none of the motions that my first team, you denied every one of my first team's motions. You denied every one of my second team's motions. And now you denied every one of my motions until today.
I haven't denied every one of your motions.
Every single one of their motions was denied. Every single one of the second team's motions were denied, and all mine. So you didn't come into this with any bias against me in the first place?
Again, file a motion that has legal merit. Okay?
And none of my attorneys ever filed a motion with any legal merit?
They filed a motion on your behalf, the first team, to preclude media coverage, and I issued my ruling according to the law. All right. They filed a motion to have you dressed out, not in jail clothes during hearings like this. Okay. That was not based in law. I denied that motion. So I've ruled on the motions as required by law.
Without any kind of a conclusion of law in them, just denied, 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 denied. Does that not show a bias and a prejudice against one single person?
All right. Are you done?
Are you not going to recuse yourself?
No, I'm denying your motion. Anything else? All right, I was handed a motion to suppress all evidence pertaining to Jeep Wrangler.
I have not received that.
Did you probably got a copy of it today or not?
No.
Oh, do we need to make copies? All right, go ahead and make copies for the state. I also have a motion to dismiss for non-preservation of crucial evidence. So make a copy. I guess the state can file their response to those. All right. Anything else for today from the state's perspective?
No, Your Honor.
From the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll see everyone on the 29th at 1 p.m. Again, that's in this courtroom.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to see if we catch any hot mic, guys. I'm just going to see if we catch any hot mic, guys. I'm just going to see if we catch any hot mic, guys. Okay, sorry, technical difficulties there, guys. I'm stunned. I did not expect her to go off the rails this far today. Wow. If you're just joining us, we have just witnessed the final trial management conference of Lori Daybell's conspiracy to murder Brandon Boudreaux case. If you missed it, I'm going to do an entire video on just this hearing because this is not what I expected, to be honest with you. I kind of thought we were going to get here in the other trial. I kind of thought that it was going to wear on her, that she was not having motions granted, that she was getting objected to so much. Joe Tall Chief, you've got it right on. This is the real Lori. This is the real Lori. I think I heard Colby say the way that she's being disrespectful to the judge, to Miss Kay, to everybody in the courtroom, that's how she treated Charles all the time. Behind closed doors, if you were not 100% Team Lori, this is what you got. This is what you got. This is the true Lori. This is how she behaved towards me when she didn't want me in the apartment anymore. This is how she behaved towards me if I gave her any pushback about how she was doing my hair or how she was managing her kids. You know, when we would take Colby and my oldest daughter, Emmy, to go and get pictures taken, it was where she wanted, it was when she wanted, it was how she wanted. And if I gave any pushback, this is what I got. So, yeah. I'm shocked that she did this in front of the judge, honestly. But I saw a little bit of a glint in her eye during the interview she did with Arizona True Crime, our Arizona Family, where Brianna Whitney said the judge has been very patient and very fair with you. And Lori was like, really? You think he has been? And it was concealed rage underneath there. So now we're just seeing it come out. I think Lori's had enough of behaving. I think she's had enough of keeping the lid on, and I think she's just going to continue to go full court press on this. Her mask is fully off. It's no longer just cracks in the veneer now. Like, it has completely fallen away at this point. Definitely, this is the real Lori. I'm shocked and I'm stunned, just like you guys are. But I am and I'm not. I honestly thought we'd get here sooner, but I'm stunned because she knows she needs this judge on her side. She knows that she needs him to continue to be patient and kind and accepting for her to get things in the way that she wants. And she's fully given up on that, it seems like. I think she's fully given up on trying to behave for Judge Boreski. I'm just shocked. I really am shocked. So disrespectful. Yeah, she's not getting her way, and she's really angry about it. And so here's kind of what we see a little bit, right? We've seen Lori try to be compliant. We've seen her be deferential to the judge. Way back at the beginning of Charles's trial, in those early hearings, she was very deferential. She was very compliant. She was using her baby voice with the judge. She was really trying to be sweet. And that wasn't working for her. Her motions kept getting denied. And so then we sort of saw it in the courtroom. We heard jurors comment that she would look over at the jury and she would roll her eyes when they brought in big evidence. She even faked out some of the jurors. At least one of the jurors said that they believed that she was not guilty, going all the way up until the final statements, closing statements. She tried it with the jury. She tried it with different witnesses. Didn't work. So given the fact that that tactic hasn't worked and isn't working, this is her last ditch effort. She is throwing the dice. She's just throwing it all away. The mask is completely off. And she thinks like this is the last ditch effort that she has, is to just bully the judge. And then ask the judge to recuse himself. Are you kidding me? I did not have that on my bingo card. Not anywhere. Not anywhere. Yeah. This is craziness. It just is craziness. The judge had to ask her, "Are you done?" Twice. Are you done? Man, this man has the patience of a saint. Yeah, Eliza, this is my question. What's it going to take for her to be held in contempt of court? What's it going to take? I mean, if that wasn't it, this judge, I think he's probably this close. This close. The judge did put her in her place. I'm glad with that. I do wonder, I'm going to do some research on contempt and see what are the requirements. We might find out. You're right. I do think that she should have been charged with contempt. Goodness. Wow. So Judge Boreski, just as always, a class act, really holding it together and keeping control of his courtroom. Are you done? Like, go ahead. You can say whatever you want. Like, that is such a classic Grey Rock move. He didn't, his blood pressure didn't go up a single point. I don't think that temper tantrum or those couple of temper tantrums bothered him at all. He just very unemotionally responded, "Are you done?" Like, just go ahead, get it out. It's like she's a whiny toddler throwing a temper tantrum. And he's like, "Go ahead. just go ahead. I don't know if you guys remember this phenomenon a few years back where people were posting reels of their toddlers melting down, and then they would put a little caption about what was going on. And it was usually something like his shoelace was too long on one side and the toddler was absolutely losing their crap over it. This is what I feel like we just witnessed just now. You know, with Lori losing it in the courtroom, and the caption would be, she's just not getting her way. I really think that's kind of what we witnessed just now. So just to backtrack, for those of you who may missed it, where we really started to go off the rails here, Lori was giving some pushback. Again, motions denied. However, she did have one. She did have one motion that was granted. But she's giving pushback, and it's increasing. If we watch this back, and I'm going to do a whole video on this, because you're going to watch her ramp up a little bit. She's getting a little more annoyed. She's getting a little more annoyed, losing her patience a little more. Where we really went off the rails was at the very end. We were done. We were so close, you guys. And then the judge was going over the final schedule, saying that he expects that the trial will end on the 19th of June, but as a safety, just in case, we're going to put on Monday the 23rd if it's needed. Now, Lori's a little late to the party here because the judge had already gone over the jury selection dates and the process for all of that, when that was going to happen. And I think Lori probably tuned out at that moment. I think that's what triggered her, was when we were talking about when the jury questionnaires were going to go out. The judge was basically saying, we're going to do it the same way that we did it before. And she said, are you going to address the juror misconduct or the alleged juror misconduct? Actually, it was before that. I'm going to back up. It was before that. Here was the specific trigger. The judge was giving her pushback on her witness list, asking her to once again, according to Lori, reveal her entire legal strategy. This is the first time she went off the rails. In my notes, this is what I put. So I'm going to have to just give my entire case in chief in front of everybody? Just give it away to the state? Is this how this works? That was where she lost it. Basically, this is the second time this has happened. The first time was very public. It was in front of the entire court. The whole gallery was full. The cameras were rolling. And the judge asked her, what relevance does this witness have? And he was asking about Brandon Boudreaux. It was the very first day of the trial, just before the jurors were brought in. I was sitting right next to Brandon in the front row. And he just happened to be there that day. It wasn't planned or anything like that. But the state was saying, hey, we probably need to interview this witness because he's on your list. He's been subpoenaed. He's in the courtroom. If he's going to appear as a witness, then we need to make sure that we get to interview him. So the judge asked Lori, what relevance does this witness have? Things. He's going to testify to things, is what she said. And the judge said, well, it has to be something relevant to the case. Can you tell us what that is? What's the relevance? What's he going to testify to? And she kind of, she was taken off guard. She says, without revealing my entire legal strategy, first of all, Lori, we know you don't have one. Okay. Your legal strategy is, I'm pretty and they should just believe me. That's what I think her strategy is. All of that being said, she was being forced to tell the judge, well, what are you doing? This is why this bothers her so much. People with narcissistic traits do not like to be held accountable. And when you say something out loud in the court, it's on the record. They can read it back to you. You can be held accountable for that. So if Lori were to say, well, the relevance is, and this is what she should have said, the relevance is, I believe Mr. Boudreaux was in contact with the victim prior to this alleged crime. And he's going to testify as to their relationship and as to what they spoke about prior to the crime. Well, Lori knows that Brandon was not in contact with Charles. She just wanted to know what text messages were exchanged between them. So I feel like she didn't find something out in discovery that she wanted, so she was going to call Brandon to the stand for that purpose. And the judge asked her to prove the relevance. What relevance does he have? So they did a sidebar. The judge was overly accommodating. He did not have to do that, but they did a sidebar so that Lori could explain to the judge in private, not in front of the whole gallery, what her whole legal strategy was regarding this particular witness. So after that sidebar, Trina Kay took Brandon Boudreaux into one of the interview rooms to interview him because that is her right as the prosecuting attorney. And after that interview, Trina Kay determined this person has no relevance to this case whatsoever. He was not in contact with the victim prior to the alleged crime. So they said he's stricken from the witness list without prejudice, which again is the judge giving her extraordinary leeway, because he could have dismissed Brandon with prejudice, meaning that you can't call him again no matter what happens. But she did have the option to call Brandon during the trial if at some point Lori came up with a reason that he might be relevant. So again, judge accommodates Lori, but says Mr. Boudreaux is allowed to attend the trial. He's not on your witness list anymore. You can call him later if you feel like you can establish some relevancy. So that was the first time that she got called out for having no legal strategy, having arguments with no basis in fact. And today was the second time. And I think for someone with narcissistic traits, that is just too much to endure. You don't call me out a second time for the same thing. She was mad the first time. She lost it this time. This is when she lost it. Is this how it works? Well, yes, Lori, this is how it works. This is how the legal system works. You have to reveal your entire legal strategy to the other team. They also have to reveal their entire legal strategy. You get to interview all of the state's witnesses. You get to know what they're going to testify to what they're going to testify. You get to have access to all of the evidence. You get to have access to all of the law enforcement reports. You get to know everything that the state is going to put up against you. And in return, you also have to give your list of witnesses. You have to have your experts noticed in a timely manner. They have to have relevance that they're going to testify to. Honestly, it's a wild move for Lori to put Jeff White on as a witness. He's her investigator. He's working on the defense team. What's he going to testify to? Well, he's interviewing all these witnesses too. Well, ostensibly, Lori, you have access to all of that information as well. So should we put you on the stand? I would love it if you would get on the stand. Lori Daybell, first witness, last witness. That's the only one we need because she's the only one who knows the whole story because she was the only one who was there. Except in this case, she was in Hawaii, conveniently. So yeah, that was where the meltdown started. The judge continues to give her pushback. He says, just because, and he's talking specifically about Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis. What relevance do they have? She says the subpoenas are out for those people, and they're relevant because they knew Brandon Boudreaux. And she says, it will become apparent if I'm allowed to call them as witnesses what their relevance is. Well, that's not how it works, Lori. That's not how it works. And Judge Bresky says, you can't just call anyone that had any interaction. The postman, the grocery store clerk that served them that day, the waiter who brought their green chili enchiladas. You can't just call all of those people as witnesses just because they had an interaction with those people. So Lori then says, well, Your Honor, the state had them on theirs. Now, this is one of those things that I really hate about people with narcissistic traits, that instead of answering the argument, they're going to point to someone else's behavior. The judge is saying, Lori, why do you have these on your list? And she says, well, the state had them on their list. Isn't that good enough for you? Well, but then the state ended up not calling them. And so Lori says, I have him there just in case. Just in case. That's not a legal strategy. Just in case is not a legal strategy. We maybe need a t-shirt that says that. I don't know. So Judge Boreski says, it sounds like they're not relevant. However, he's going to be, again, over accommodating is the word that he used. I'm going to be over accommodating and allow these witnesses to remain on the list. However, the state gets to interview them. And if the state determines they don't have any relevance, then they're going to be precluded from testifying. So then the judge starts to go over, this is when we think we're going to end. We're going to notice it on the 23rd, that Monday, the 23rd, if needed. We think we're going to be done by the 19th. And that's when Lori comes in and says, she's going back and she's thinking about the jury questionnaire that's going to go out. She's already approved it. This is the thing. At the end of the last trial, they approved, once again, the parties stipulated to what is going to show up on the jury questionnaire. It's already been approved. It's a done deal. Now Lori wants to come in and say, I'm going to object to my personal information being released in this jury questionnaire. Judge says, what personal information? Lori says, state versus Lori Daybell. That's my personal information. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's your name. It's the name you asked to be called by, first of all. Secondly, it's the name of the case. I love Judge Boreski's just very flat delivery. It's the name of the case. But that's my personal information, Your Honor. It shouldn't be out there. Judge Boreski says, this is what I've done in every single case I have ever tried. Ever. His whole career. And that's when Lori just went off the rails for the first time. I mean, kind of for the first time. And the judge finally said, are you done? That man, I want to send him a bottle of whiskey and a bouquet of flowers and some wax for his beautiful convertible. I cannot imagine being in his position, and just his response was perfect. Are you done? So then he starts going over again the schedule. Courtroom 5D again, by the way, everybody. On the 29th at 1 p.m., they're going to go over the electronic questionnaires. On the 30th at 10 a.m., jurors will come in person. And he expects the jury to be seated by that afternoon. My head is still kind of spinning a little bit, you guys. Mick Spunky, I'm so glad you're here. Is that a Harry Potter reference? Because if it is, I love it. If it's not, tell me where I went wrong. I do want to point out, though, I didn't really like the way that the judge was referring to the jurors who survive. For a second, I was like, what? So he says the ones who survived the interview process. And then they're going to be in courtroom 5D, just like they were in before, which I'm glad to hear because there's a lot more space in there than his original courtroom. Oh, I can only imagine what is happening right now with Lori Daybell. She is probably still somewhere in the courthouse waiting to be transported back to the Estrella jail. And I can only imagine her fuming and pacing around with those leg shackles on where she can only shuffle with her feet. Man, she's probably really, really angry right now. And there's probably somebody now here's the other thing that I want to say about people with narcissistic traits. This is narcissistic rage that we saw happening in the courtroom today. And what's going to happen, unfortunately, is this is not the end of it. whomever else happens to be in Lori's path for the rest of the day today is going to get sprayed on, because somebody has angered her, and everyone else is going to feel the effects of that, because she can't lash out at the judge anymore. Judge is gone. Nothing she can do to lash out towards the judge. So her fellow inmates, her sock puppets in her jail cell, man, they're going to get it. Mothers who have this type of narcissistic rage, their children, unfortunately, usually, or their spouse, ends up being the brunt of that fallout when they get called out and held accountable. Unfortunately, it's usually the kids. How does the narcissistic rage finally fade? Usually not after a good night's sleep, unfortunately. It's going to take her getting supply from someone else. And people with narcissistic traits get supply by wielding power over other people. So if there's someone in the jail who is specifically empathetic towards her, or if she gets a phone call from a family member later today or something like that, that person will be who she takes supply from. So I can just imagine if a family member or somebody calls her or texts her today, Lori will take out this anger on them by belittling them, by shaming them. She will blame it on someone else, and she will take that as her superiority over that. I don't know if you guys saw, it was kind of a terrible rendition of the Snow White story, but it was a movie with Charlize Theron as the evil queen. And I believe Anne Hathaway played Snow White. I could be wrong about that. Yes, Toby Keith. Thank you, Nick Spunky. Appreciate it. But the way that the evil queen maintained her youth and beauty was literally by sucking the souls out of younger, more beautiful women. And it was pretty horrible visual, but that's the way I see narcissistic people. That's what they do to other people. They take someone who is younger, more beautiful, more talented, more whatever the narcissist isn't. Kristen Stewart, you're right. Thank you. And they suck the life out of them. I did a video about the devouring mother. That is the kind of mother I believe that Lori was. I believe that she kept Tylee small on purpose because it made Lori feel more powerful. Tylee was beautiful and she was smart, and Lori could not be surrounded by that. And so she did her very best to silence Tylee, to keep her small, and to make sure that Tylee never outshined her. And unfortunately, that is the work of the narcissistic mother, is to devour her child, to devour their opportunities and their good qualities for themselves. So it's the super unfortunate part of having a narcissistic mother, or a mother with narcissistic traits. A lot of jealousy, a lot of control. I do think that Tylee was catching on, and I think unfortunately that's one of the reasons she's no longer with us, I think. So 3 times, right? 3 times that we saw Lori's rage come out, and the final time, judge gets all finished with everything, Lori interrupts and says, "I'm going to ask you to recuse yourself for your bias and your prejudice," which is absolutely ridiculous, because anyone with a brain, with 2 brain cells to rub together, has been watching the saintly patience of this judge. And the word that he used is he said, "I have over accommodated you." I have over accommodated you throughout this entire trial. And Lori started to go off the rails and say, "You have denied every single one of my motions. Every motion that I or my team have filed, you have denied every single one of them." And brilliantly, Judge Boreski says, "I'm pretty sure I was here 15 minutes ago when I granted your motion to meet with your attorneys during the lunch break. Facts. Brilliant. Same thing that Nancy Drew did. Just bring it back to the facts. Forget your hyperbole, forget your rage, forget your anger. Here's the fact. The fact is, I just granted one of your motions. Well, that was the only one. That's the only one you've granted. You've denied all my other motions, all my team's motions, everything. Judge Boresky says, well, try filing a motion with some basis in law. None of your motions have had any basis in law, and he went over some of them. Your motion to, not appear in street clothes or to not have any restraints whatsoever. There's no basis in law for that. I literally can't grant that motion. I can't grant any of these motions that have no basis in law. You have to refer back to something factual, evidential, some precedent. I love how calm he is too, Jasmine Harris. It's so validating to see somebody respond to her with Grey Rock. That is really exactly what Grey Rock is. He was as interesting to Lori as a Grey Rock. He did not take her bait. What a narcissistic person is trying to do is to bait you into an argument and bait you into a fight and get you to respond impulsively out of anger. And Judge Boresky doesn't take the bait. And this is what we have to learn to do with people when we're dealing with bullies, with narcissistic people. We have to learn not to take the bait. We have to learn to not care. Everything that you're saying is incorrect. Your motions have no basis in fact. I can't grant that motion. She goes off and she goes off and she goes off. Are you done? Judge Boresky responds for the third time. I think, second time he says, are you done? We definitely need some are you done merch. I had somebody contact me about that and I'm going to get right on it, you guys. I'm going to answer some questions. I know I've got some questions starred and I'm going to answer those. And I also promised that I would give you Trina K's witness list. I have that here as well. And then maybe I'll play a song for you guys. I've had it up on my Patreon up until this point. It has not been public, but I may play it just to make myself feel better. Because this was a doozy, you guys. So Lori's final little dig that she's trying to get in is, so are you not going to recuse yourself? No. That's it. Just no. That's all. And then calmly just turns to the next order of business. There is a motion that was filed today, apparently, by the Daybell defense team to suppress all the evidence that has to do with the Jeep. Wild. Just wild. Like how, again, there's no basis in law for you to suppress all of the Jeep evidence, but it will be interesting to see. Joe Schmo, if you're out there, I'm going to be counting on you to see if any of these filings are going to be finally seen. Now, I do want to go back for just a second to talk about a couple of other things. Judge Boresky went back, and maybe this is part of the injury that happened today. Maybe this is where it started to go off the rails, you guys. Judge Boresky called her out for asking for a break at some point during the last trial because there was a strap hanging down from her rack belt. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but we were all super curious in the courtroom about why Lori was requesting a break. And I suspected it had something to do with the rack belt being uncomfortable or something like that. Well, there was a strap hanging down. Apparently she asked to go back and make an adjustment to her foundation undergarments so that, yes, she did. Just told her to stop interrupting him. This is going to be a fun one to go through again, you guys. I'm excited. So this is when they were talking about she's going to have the same conditions. She'll have no leg braces, but she will have the rack belt. And then Lori says, the judge says, I don't think the jury noticed anything about the rack belt. Well, I could see it from where I was sitting, but I was also looking for it. So you guys are the best. This honestly, this helps me get through this. There's a strap hanging down from her brain. Yeah. It's going to be fun to go back through this and comment on it. But yeah, so the judge says, I don't think the jury noticed anything. And I was saying that I could notice it from where I was sitting because Lori was wearing a jacket that was fitted to just below her rib cage, and the rack belt was just underneath that. So there was a little bit of a ruffle to the back of her jacket, and the rack belt to me was visible there. I could tell that she was wearing it. But the judge said, I don't think that the jury noticed anything. And Lori said, well, the jury wasn't polled to see if they noticed anything. And Judge Borowski said, that's right. There was no request for that. Moving on. I think she did not like that interaction at all. I'm going to read this because this echoes how I feel. You'll never see me in Canton, South Dakota, because I agree that's a sad place. There is something deeply satisfying and fulfilling in watching a handsome, intelligent, articulate, and thoughtful male publicly admonish and deny Lori Daybell of her immediate demands. Snaps, no notes. Screenshot it. Put it on a t-shirt or a coffee mug or both. I love it. Absolutely. It is deeply satisfying to see her get shut down. And to see somebody who is intelligent and good at their job to do their job and not allow her to get away with any of her BS. Oh, Canton, Mass. Absolutely. I haven't been in Massachusetts in a long time. I miss the Northeast. Anyway, I wanted to go over that. Then I wanted to go over Lori's witness list. Lonnie Dworkin, Weaver Barkman, Detective Moffat again, Jeff White, Melanie Gibb, Zulema Pastenis. Well, at least she took her family off. So there's that. But Lonnie Dworkin, again, there's a problem with the fact that she's extremely late in noticing Lonnie Dworkin. The state has not had time to interview him or to read his report because it's not even written yet. And it's supposed to be done 30 days before the start of trial. We're obviously way past that. Trina K notices it's extremely late. This is a problem. Judge Borowski says it is a problem. And then Judge wants to know what is the relevance of Weaver Barkman. Who is that? Well, he's going to be called in to rebut the forensics for the bullet striking the vehicle of Brandon Boudreaux. The judge has to feed it to her, though. He says, is this for some kind of impeachment? And she says, yes. And then he says, what's the relevance of Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis? And that's when she said, the subpoenas are out. It's relevant to Brandon Boudreaux. We've already been over this part, so I don't want to rehash that. However, the judge kind of says, too late for Lonnie Dworkin, probably too late for Weaver Barkman, but I'm going to leave the door open just in case at some point you should happen to come up with some kind of something that is relevant and has a legal basis. So he leaves the door open for those two. Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenis, he leaves the door open for them as well. Not Melanie Pulowski, not Melanice, Melanie Gibb, who was Lori's friend, part of the Seven Gatherers, and Zulema Pastenis, who was the wife of her brother Alex just a couple of weeks before they got married, just a couple of weeks before Alex died, under very suspicious circumstances, in my opinion. And so the judge says, I'm going to leave the door open for those two witnesses. However, the state gets to interview them and decide if they have anything relevant to the case. So I wanted to make sure we went over those. And now the state's list. This I put this over on my Patreon. Ironically enough, Joe Schmo sent this to me like 5 minutes after I got off of my last live where we were going over everything else that I hadn't addressed yet. And so I put it over on my Patreon first, but here it is for you guys. The following persons may be called. First, I wanted to note a couple of things, and I'll show this document a little bit later if I get a chance, but this is the state's pretrial statement. This was filed again on the 11th, but we just got it. Number one, list the charges and sentencing range. So I want to make sure that we point this out to you guys. Count 1 is conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, a Class 1 felony, dangerous offense on October 2nd, 2019. The sentence for this alleged crime is life with the possibility of release after 25 years. Number 2, settlement status. There was no offer made. It was not an option for Lori to plead guilty in this case. So for those who were asking, why can't she just plead guilty and we move on without costing all this time and expense? Wasn't offered. It was not on the table. There was no offer. Number 3, the number of trial jurors and alternates, 12 jurors plus 4 alternates. So we're not going to try to get more alternates in this time. That feels a little nerve-wracking to me, but 12 plus 4. Now here's the list of potential witnesses. The following persons may be called by the state as witnesses or referred to in the course of testimony or in documents. Gilbert Police Department. And she gives the officer numbers for each of these people. Jason Biggs, David Frerer, David Frerer. Tammy Lachik, who is a retired crime scene specialist. And that was the Tammy that they were referring to earlier on in the hearing, where the subpoena is under seal. So we're not going to see that subpoena, and we're not going to see what it is that Tammy Lachik is going to testify to. But there is an objection from Lori to, she wants to recuse this witness. She wants this witness removed. And the judge has asked, have you filed a response for this? And she's like, no, we're working on it. I just barely got this stuff. Okay, well, Lori, I got this stuff days ago. I mean, I know there might be a delay in the court system and everything like that. But anyway, judge asked her if she can be ready to file by Wednesday a response to this. And this is all going to be under seal. So we're not going to see any of these responses, but you can expect that these things will be brought up the next time that they meet, which is going to be on the 29th, to go over those electronic questionnaires that get sent out next week. So Tammy Lachik is that retired crime scene specialist. There is an objection to her testimony, but Lori has to file a response, and all of that is going to be under seal. And then Judge Boreski does reference and say, well, I guess we'll just file it, and then we're going to talk about it on the 29th or the 30th. So then continuing with Gilbert Police Department, we have Nolan McDermott, Ryan Pillar, Marianne Robb, who's also retired, and Patrick Young. So that's 7 officers from the Gilbert Police Department. Then from Chandler Police Department, again, Detective Nathan Duncan. I thought he was super competent in the last trial, and I'm looking forward to hearing him again. From the Mesa Police Department, Vanessa Mielke, Mielke, forensic scientist, Lisa Perry, who's a forensic scientist, and Emmy Lynn Sapinoso, who is a retired forensic scientist. Revenge subpoena. Yeah, if she knew that I had this channel and I was talking about her, she probably would try to subpoena me. Although I guarantee you I have absolutely nothing material to offer in the case. I did, while all of this was happening, I did call the FBI twice to say things that I did know or that I suspected or information that I had. I don't know if any of it was useful to them, but I wanted to say that, that I did try. I did whatever I could. And then from the Phoenix Police Department, Kyle Mueller, who's a forensic scientist. Sorry, guys. And Thomas Olzak from the Department of Public Safety, who is an expert. Yes, I did notice that Lori's trying to get Detective Moffat on the stand because she really wants to question him about, well, in the last case, she wanted to question him about why no arrests were made and why they labeled that particular instance as self-defense. And again, she didn't put on any evidence. She never did get a chance to put him on the stand. I think she was hoping the state would call him and she would get that on cross. But I think at some point she just threw up her hands and said, I'm just not going to call anybody. I'm entitled. I don't believe that I have to put on, she didn't have to, as per the legal requirements, she didn't have to put on a defense, but she just threw up her hands and said, I don't think they made their burden. I'm entitled to be found not guilty. So then from Rexburg Police Department, Ray Hermosillo. Ray, if you're out there, I'm rooting for you. I got to meet Ray during the last trial. I'm so grateful to him for everything he's done on this case. And then the FBI expert, Nick Balance. Now, I noticed a lot of comments go by about Detective Balance, or he's an expert in the CAST data. I noticed a lot of people concerned about them using his name publicly. Well, he's not using his real name in his undercover situation, and he has appeared in other cases. In fact, he did testify in the Chad Daybell trial, and his testimony was not broadcast. It was only audio from that testimony. So he's going to be fine. The judge asked Lori if she had a dog in the fight over precluding media from showing Detective Balance, and she said, I just got a bunch of stuff and just got it right now. So she hasn't replied to any of that, but she says she doesn't have a dog in that fight. I don't think she has any legal basis to deny that request for this detective to continue to, I don't know if he's an agent or special agent, but we do, of course, want his anonymity to be protected. Then from the Drug Enforcement Administration, a name I haven't heard before, Thomas D. Miller. Maybe some of you know more about him, but I don't. And then civilians/victim, Robert Anthony Abatamarco. I don't know who that is. If any of you guys know who these are, I haven't had a chance to research these yet. And then, of course, Brandon Boudreaux, who's the victim, Elizabeth Jane Collins, Timothy Zane Deloach, I believe it is, Deloach, Lynette Mendoza, and Dan Moss. So I don't know any of those people. I haven't had a chance to look through the FOIA documents and research who those people are, but I will be doing that. And I will make sure to share the information with you as soon as I have it. And then this report goes on to say estimated trial days for the state's case in chief, 7 to 10 days. A brief statement of the case to be read to the jury is going to be the following. Give me 1 second because the type is kind of small. I'm reading this off my phone, guys. The state alleges that in the days leading up to and including October 2nd, 2019, Lori Vallow Daybell and her brother Alexander Cox conspired to commit first-degree murder of Brandon Boudreaux. The state further alleges that Lori Vallow's co-conspirator Alex Cox drove a Jeep that belonged to Lori Vallow from Rexburg, Idaho to Gilbert, Arizona. The state alleges that on the morning of October 2nd, 2019, Alex Cox shot at Brandon Boudreaux from the Jeep as Brandon was returning to his house, and then they give the street in Gilbert, Arizona. Brandon Boudreaux was not injured. And then the trial schedule state has identified approximately 22 witnesses for this trial. 5 of these witnesses reside outside of Arizona. And that's the reason why the state has asked for the court to be dark on 6/6, the 6th of June, to accommodate people traveling out of town. The state believes it will conclude with available witnesses either Wednesday, June 4th or Thursday, June 5th. So they're asking for that dark day on the 6th And then here are the pending motions. A motion to dismiss for abuse of discretion by Judge Boreski, the state's amended 609 motion, the motion in limine to preclude inadmissible evidence relating to Tammy Lachik, the state's request to preclude the media from showing face of testifying witness, and the state hereby moves to strike the state's notice of intent to use defendant's other acts pursuant to Rule 404B. So that motion was stricken, but the 609 motion, the amended motion, is still in process, awaiting Lori's response, Team Daybell's response. So, goodness, this has been pretty crazy. I would like to answer some of your questions. Keep them coming. Irish Jen will star them as they're relevant to this case. If you have questions that are relevant to the previous trial or other trials, I'm going to preclude those right now because it's a lot. Hopefully someone in chat can answer your question if it's something that we've already addressed. So yeah, I was interested too in what 404B the state wanted to bring in. The only thing that was noticed in her amended petition was that count 7. So I'm interested. I think on the 29th, we'll probably have Lori's response by that point, and we'll have a brief hearing regarding all of that. And then MB, thanks for this about the new intro. This is the intro to my podcast. So I want to keep it focused on the midlife revolution. Is about making small changes that change everything. I think right now the big change that we're focused on is learning to identify these manipulative behaviors and learning how to respond to them so that you don't get drawn in and so that you don't become the victim of the narcissistic person or the bully or the person in your life who's manipulative and controlling. And I actually played the wrong intro. That is not the finished version. If you want to see the finished, polished version of it, it's actually on the homepage of my YouTube channel. There is that video is pinned for anybody who hasn't seen it before. It's the intro to my Midlife Revolution podcast, and a shout out to my people at Podmatch, and also the people who helped me launch my podcast over at Amplify You, they're a Canadian company, and they helped me to put together all of my material to launch my podcast. So shout out to them. I appreciate their efforts there. And then, we kind of have talked about this before, how Melanice avoided arrest. Again, they're just going to go off of what is likelihood of conviction. We've talked about that before. Nikki Peaches says, my money's on Mel P. Isn't facing charges because Ian made those recordings. They used them to go after the biggest fish. Well, that's partially true because Melanie did receive some type of immunity in Idaho for her role in Idaho. She has not received any kind of immunity in Arizona. So I'm going to be watching to see what comes up next. Hopefully that's going to happen. KP, if the witness is an undercover agent, why is the judge saying his name? Yeah, the judge knows that it's safe to use his name. So he's going to be okay. Catherine Pesa, has Melanie been called as a witness in this trial? Melanie Gibb has been. And we did go over that prosecution list, which I'm going to research into who the civilians are on that list so we can talk more about that. Chrissy SoCal, agree Megan with her questions is similar to the questions she was asking Nancy Joe. She wants the info. She wants to know what people are saying about her. Kind of a misguided priorities, a lack of awareness on Lori's part about what needs to happen, what needs to come in as evidence. She's just totally unaware. Catherine Pesa, I can tell you that the last that I understood, there is a shared custody agreement between Brandon Boudreaux and his former wife, Melanie, now Pulowski. So yeah, she does have some custody of her kids. I don't know how much, and I don't know any of the details of that, so I don't want to comment on that, but it's concerning for sure. Yeah. Four of Cats says, do you think she couldn't think of the reason right then or just didn't want to tell? I think she doesn't want to tell. Honestly, people with narcissistic traits, don't like to they don't like to show all of their cards. And this is one of the traits of a narcissistic / enmeshed family, is that nobody in the family has the whole story. People have bits and pieces of the story. Lori will tell bits and pieces of the truth to people. And it's kind of like her language around the zombie references. When did I ever say that was part of my belief system? You know, she doesn't say the word, she uses the letter Z so that she can have a little bit of wiggle room there. She doesn't like to be held down. So that's what she's looking for, is wiggle room. Marissa Monroe, thanks for asking. My baby grandson was born about 3 weeks ago, and he's doing much better. I mentioned that he had some pretty severe jaundice after he was born, but they were more concerned about a protein processing problem. And we don't really have any more answers on the genetic testing yet that's been done, but the jaundice is starting to finally go away. It's just lasted a lot longer than one would expect. His birth was super peaceful. It was just about a 2-hour labor. By the time I had a chance to even tell my kids that she was in labor, I went to check on her and she had already had the baby. So it was a very peaceful birth. And so it was really unexpected for him to have any kind of jaundice, but he's doing better. I just talked with my daughter this morning, and I appreciate you asking. So thank you. C. Cheadle, always good to see you, says, do you think we could get the jail to tie her to a confinement chair and watch this live? Oh, thank you guys for your comedy and your snark. It helps me feel better. History underfoot, do you think Tylee was catching on or still under Lori's full control? I think she was catching on. I think I addressed that before. So sad for me to think about, for all of us to think about. 4 of Cats, I think she's going to blame Tylee in some way, and I'm going to wish strongly that Lori would be afflicted with biting ants or something. Yeah. Again, it's nothing that she does surprises me. I think one of Rex's daughters said that, like, the bar is so low for her behavior that, it's just not going to surprise me anymore. It's disappointing over and over. It's disappointing that she continues to blame her own victims. Horrific and horrible. I don't think there's a better way to put that. Lee T. Melanie Phibb did go to Brandon's house after the shooting and asked neighbors if they knew where he was. Interesting. I did not know that. I did recently listen to a couple of her police interviews, and honestly, pretty sketchy. She couldn't even account for her whereabouts that day. In the one where she brought her child with her to the interview room, the detective asked her to go through your day, tell me where you were and what you did. And at one point she kind of lost her train of thought and said, asking her child, addressing her child, did we go to the park? Did we go to the zoo? Did we go to Mimi's house? Where did we go? It was just very weird. The whole thing was weird. Sorry. I was talking about Melanice. That was Melanie Phibb. You were saying Melanie Phibb went to Brandon Boudreaux's house. I did not know that. So I'm going to be looking through the evidence again to refamiliarize myself with it. Only good thing is Tylee and JJ are free of her. That's for sure. I almost have to view it as someone with a terrible illness being free from the pain of their illness, because they're now free from the pain of having to endure that abuse over and over from her. Wasn't Melanice asking her friends and family what they wanted after Brandon was dead? I don't know. I did not know about that. Goodness. That's very concerning. Joel Roberts, are we going to see the video of the storage unit? I think we are. I think that's going to be key evidence, because removing the tire and the back seat from the Jeep with Chad, that's Lori helping. That's literally conspiracy. That's her helping the situation along. So I think that's going to be key evidence. I think we'll see that for sure. Lee T, Megan, your coverage is so much more informative and enlightening than news and other channels. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really want to point out the personality traits and point out how these people operate in society, because so many people look at this and just go, she's crazy, and dismiss it as all crazy. She's a psychopath. She's a sociopath, whatever it is. I promise you it matters less what her diagnosis is It matters more how to handle people like this, because even if they're not horrible serial killers, we do deal with manipulative people all the time. I do. I've dealt with it in my workplace, in my family, in, friend groups. We need to know how to deal with these type of people so that they get held accountable for their behavior. So I think it's really, really important. I love this Judge 2.0. Me too. I've got to figure out something. I don't know. Judges can't really accept gifts, I don't think, but maybe I'll just write him a nice card or something. I appreciate him so much. And I think a lesser judge, this could have gone bad. It could have gone different ways. Let's just revisit this moment. Crazy that she asked him to recuse himself for his extreme bias. Just sometimes I imagine Judge Boreski going home. I don't know if he has a wife and children, but just going home to his family and eating dinner, and, his significant other saying, how was work today? And him going, yeah, it was a crazy day today. More garbage from incarcerated persons. And that's it. I don't imagine him perseverating on this at all. Like just another day dealing with criminals. Thank you guys. So TD, there's a motion on the table for Trina K to bring in her prior convictions. So I'm a little confused about exactly what's happening, because the original motion was stricken. There's an amended motion, Rule 609. Lori has to respond to that before the judge can basically have a hearing on it. So that one is still up in the air. That motion is still in play. And then Lee T, Megan, the info about Melanie Gibb going to Brandon's house came from Brandon's friend, who's the wife of Brandon's business partner, who said that in a Hidden True Crime interview, I think. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. That's one of the things I need to go back and revisit. Glad to hear that your therapist is on the same page. Part of the reason why I know so much about narcissistic personalities is because I was surrounded by them my entire life, and I went to a lot of therapy. I did 2 different types of behavioral therapy, as well as an intensive outpatient group therapy, as well as EMDR therapy. And I may need some more therapy after this trial is over. The last one was pretty difficult, but I've bounced back. I think I'm in a decent place. So I'm going to keep checking in, because what turns our stomach is sweet ecstasy to her. Yeah, it's gross, isn't it? What kind of Lori will show up in court? Kiko Jump wants to know. Well, I think she's going to have to dial it back down, because now she's going to have to appear in front of a jury. And that's who she really has to convince. At the end of the day, Judge Boreski can hate her as much as he wants, shut her motions down, sustain the state's objections, all of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, she's got to convince the jury. So I think she's going to be on her best behavior for the jury, if she can keep it together. That's going to be the big question. I honestly expected her to lose it in the last trial. I thought she did a pretty decent job, except when she was interviewing Nancy Joe. She did lose it there a little bit. And I have a full video breakdown of that testimony, that brilliant chef's kiss testimony from Nancy Joe, as well as a couple of other times, her green chili enchiladas, grilling Adam. She showed her teeth a little bit, but we've never seen her fully unmasked like she was today. This is the first time. Even in her Dateline interview, somebody made the comment, and I'm going to reiterate it. Today's hearing made her look cooperative in her Dateline interview with Keith Morrison. Yeah, so today she learned how Judge Boreski will respond when she shows herself like this. He's not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. We are going to definitely 100% do a rewatch video and recap of this hearing, because there's a lot here to go over. And it was absolutely just fireworks, crazy, unhinged behavior. Did not expect this at all. Nancy Hausauer says over 50 years old and still throwing tantrums. And that's the thing. Narcissistic people are just going to keep doing that because that's the only way they know how to behave, is to act out, to, what do they call that? Histrionic. She has histrionic traits, right? She's going to act histrionic because that's going to get some people to bow to her whims. We've seen it happen over and over, time and time again. Somebody throws a temper tantrum and the person who is in the abused position says, okay, fine, just drop it, forget it, fine. They give in to the demands because they just want the chaos to stop. Histrionic and manic today. Again, not diagnosing, not a professional therapist, but just noting what others have noted about her as well. She can't manipulate him, so she's on to the next person. And I love the emoji with the hypnotism eyes. On to the next person, who unfortunately is going to be the unwitting jury that's going to come in and have to be subjected to this. Whew, man. Lori was ecstatic and couldn't hide it. She gets off on a lot. Yeah. She gets off on power and control in any form. And yeah. Cap says, didn't Zulema testify prior that niece Melanie will have enough money for everyone to live on? Yeah, that's what we heard that in Lori's first trial. That's what Zulema testified for. I will never forget where I was when I heard that because I was stunned by it. I was actually sitting next to a lovely little pond in the Texas heat with my partner and his son, and they were fishing, catching the same 3 or 4 smallmouth bass over and over. And I was sitting there with the trial on 2x speed, listening to it. And that was when I had to go back and rewind. She said, what? I was pretty stunned by that. But again, not surprised, not totally surprised. Lori wants the judge to not include her name, but all of them, if anyone knows anything about Lori, again, without mentioning Lori's name. So State versus Doomsday Mom, is that what she would prefer? State versus Lori Whore. Somebody referred to her as Miss Daydream. Hori Daydream, I think that's a lovely name for her. I like also her prisoner number. We could refer to her as her prisoner number. But then, people could look that up too. And she just makes the assumption that everyone's going to act like she does. This is the other thing about narcissistic people. They assume that everyone is as dishonest and manipulative as they are. So they will accuse other people of dishonesty and manipulation. That's the you spot it, you got it disease. She's accusing the jury of looking up the case because that's exactly what she would do. If she was a juror, she would absolutely look it up because she wants to know. That's definitely, I think, what's going on. State versus Lori Whore, LOL. For those of you who don't know, that's a Book of Mormon reference to Korah Whore, which I'm not going to get into right now. She sees it as a challenge to win over Judge Boreski. But I think after today, I think we've seen that definitely she's given up. Thank you so much, Chicken Head PK Dorkface. Neely, that's quite a name. What shocks me is how she speaks to the judge. She'll be found in contempt. I hope so. I hope she will. Because that's something you can't argue with. That's a punishment. It's additional fines. It's, being thrown out of the courtroom. And then maybe he'll take away her privilege to be her own attorney. That's actually what I would love to see. And I think if that's the case, then that's going to spur her on to testify, which is what I really want, because she is going to get absolutely decimated on cross-examination. So let's all hope for that to come about. Maybe Nancy Jo will do interviews after Brandon's trial is over. Maybe. This is like group therapy. I agree with you guys. So I'm going to get hard to work on clipping out this video. I will hope to have it for you guys later on this evening. Thank you so much again for being here. He's bent backwards to help her. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, definitely. This is very hypocritical on Lori's part. Pray for smiting to come back. I hereby smite you, Lori. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate your input, your comments. Thank you for unpacking this with me and helping me to decompress a little bit after that craziness. So I will have another video for you later today, and stay tuned to the channel so that you know everything that's going on with the case. I'm going to continue reporting on it. And I just wish you guys the very best day. I hope you all have a better day than Lori did in court. Please take care of yourselves so you don't end up like her.